mind us giving them a few seconds to explain?
No, that would be fine. That would be fine.
All right. Hello, person calling in by phone, last digits 423. Can you indicate your...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, this is Eva Lassiter. I'm a member of this committee. Can you hear me
Hi.
in case I want to make a comment?
Sure, yeah. In case you need to make a comment, just raise your hand as you've done by pressing *6, and we will enable your microphone.
Hi, Eva.
Oh, hi. So when you take attendance, I can still say unmuted to say here. Is that correct?
Yes. You can
all right, thank you.
You can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then
Good to have you here.
And then it's *9 if you want to raise your hand to try and get Rick's attention so that you can speak on a particular item. So
all right, thank you.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to mention that this is the first time I've done this. I'm going to be relying on the office staff to help me. I'm not sure that I'm going to know how to deal with people raising their hands, but they will. They also have it. So one way or the other, we'll get a hold of everybody. It's probably just as well not to have everybody off mute because we could end up in a free-for-all. But at some point we may, who knows? We'll just sort of take it as if it was a regular committee meeting. But I do have the formalities to do as we start off, and I'm gonna start the meeting now. Let me see, where are we going to go? This is the September 14th, 2020 meeting of Community Board 6 Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Rick Eggers, and I am the chair of the committee. It's my first committee meeting, and I want to thank Brian Van Nieuwenhoven for all the work he has done in the past, and I'm glad he's staying on the committee to help out. Our vice chair is Reshma Patel. It's now, what time do we have? I think it's 6:36. And let's see. We don't have anybody who has volunteered to take minutes. Can I get a volunteer from the committee members?
Okay, I'll do it.
Nobody volunteers. Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
good. We got Gene.
I'll do it. But
Gene
since I told you I'm punchy, so they may be interesting minutes.
For this particular meeting, Gene, the most important thing is just to note the things that we change as we go through, and that'll help a good deal for follow-up afterwards. So if you can help with that, I'm going to be trying to do it myself, but you've taken minutes on many an occasion. You know how to do that, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Thank you.
We now need to do a roll call. So Jesus, if you could do the roll call, please.
Sure thing. All right. We will now take attendance by roll call. I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves when your name is called. Please say present and I will announce if there is a quorum. Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
Thank you. Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. Gene Santoro.
Here.
Thank you. Karen Moore.
Here.
Thank you. Okay. Paige Judge.
Here.
Thank you. B. Disman.
Here.
Thank you. Jim Collins.
Yep.
Thank you. Reshma Patel.
Here.
Thank you. And Rick Eggers.
Here.
Perfect attendance. Everyone's here. There is
Okay,
one.
now, and you can't, everybody can't put something on the screen now and walk away. You've all signed in. You're all committed now to stick around. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears now up on the screen. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Do I hear any objections? Okay, the agenda is adopted. The minutes from June 8th and June 10th meetings were distributed ahead of time. If there's no objection, we'll adopt those minutes. If you have an objection to the minutes, you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself and speak. Okay, so we now that we have the minutes have been approved. Okay, so I have some ground rules that I've been given here. No one may speak until granted from the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business and wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear, and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have any technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand and being called on. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, you'll be identified and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Now, for tonight's agenda, we will start with a public hearing. This is a requirement of the budget process, and it gives members of the public a chance to comment on budget requests that they would like to see if coming from our board. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak in the public hearing? Okay, I am not seeing any.
There don't appear to be any hands raised.
Okay,
I see 28. I see 28 participants, though. Curious.
it is perfectly fine for people to be listening in and to, but I should tell you that during the business meeting, there are only limited opportunities to speak unless you let me know the topic that you want to speak on so that we can control the length of time of the meeting. Are there people here who are here to speak about a particular topic outside the public meeting?
There's a hand that's gone up. Oh, and it went away. Oh, here's another hand that's come up from a Ms. Diane Grayson. 1 second. Hello, Ms. Grayson, your microphone is enabled.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. I hope it's appropriate to ask. It's on the topic of education in the district. Our district currently has a serious lack of 3K and pre-K seats. I know this goes more through City Council and Education, but I've spoken to many other constituents in the district, and I think it would be a priority to advance the agenda of adding more seats in our district. And I think it is a serious need. I know with COVID and everything, it's a challenging time to request it, but there is a real need for more 3K and pre-K seats for our district. And so I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for anyone else who is sitting in, that's a perfectly appropriate topic, perfectly appropriate question for the public hearing. So thank you for your contribution there. We'll note that you have asked for more seats in pre-K. We'll see what we can do with that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to raise a question at this time? Or make a statement?
Rick, perhaps you should mention that if they're calling in by phone, they can raise their hand by pressing *9.
Okay, thank you. That's, I think people would have heard that. It's *9 if you're calling in by phone.
I see that Claude has his hand raised.
I do.
Okay, Claude, you want to speak in public?
I know, I just want to say, to refer Diane, even though she's speaking before the Budget Committee, she should also address it to the Education Committee because they have connections with the CEC. And that might get back to appropriate people in the Board of Ed.
Thank you, Claude.
All right, there are no more hands.
Okay, then we'll let's see.
Oh, it looks like Corinne Vanderdonk, who is a member of Community Board 6, would like the floor.
Corinne, I'm saving time for you during the committee's discussion. Did you have something in particular you wanted to add outside of that?
Yes, I just wanted to Diane's comment, I just wanted to say that in the 197A committee that we're working on when it comes to the sale of Nathan Perlman Place, one of the main requests that we have is pre-K seats, 3K and pre-K seats for community use when those buildings are sold.
Thank you, Corinne.
Jim Collins would request the floor.
Jim?
If this is part of the public hearing, I just wanted to mention, as I always mention, as I've mentioned for many, many years now, on my Cassandra warning. The last month, the chairman of the Federal Reserve had acknowledged the fact that what they call the R-star, which is the real interest rate on investments, had dropped from 4.25% to 2.5%. That has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve manipulation of rates and what have you. But it is very significant in that 2012 was the year in which New York City reduced its presumed compounded annual growth rate from 8% to 7%. And we are now 8 years in at 7%. And as a consequence, with the real interest rate down to as little as 2.5%, the real interest rate, the one that you get from just doing business as opposed to the Federal Reserve rate, which is much lower, as we all know. We are now have an enhanced risk premium on all of the city pension funds. And I think that it would be appropriate, perhaps, for this committee, if not the city council, to suggest at least a 150 basis point, 1.5% reduction in the presumed compounded annual growth rate. We are in a fiscal crisis and we will not be able to evaluate where we stand unless we face the facts and assess them properly. With that higher risk premium, a big downturn in the market, with people retiring, the boomers particularly, we're never going to be able to make it up. That's all.
Thank you, Jim, and we take that as part of the public hearing. And
We have now
it won't be a topic within our district needs statement, but it's something that I know you're not going to let slide, and you're going to proceed with.
For years and years now.
You know, it isn't the first time we've heard it, and I think it's interesting you call it the Cassandra concept, because that's sort of what happened. It's likely to cause some problems. Anyway, let's get.
That goes. Credit for that goes to Gene, who dubbed it for me several years ago.
Well, then now let's continue. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak during the public hearing?
It seems like we have a hand raised by a member of the public who actually has a question regarding the testimony that Jim just gave, who is covered by the city pension plan and how is it being changed? Would we like to address that question offline?
If we can, how would you suggest we do that offline? I think it's something that's not really a topic for the committee this evening. nor is it really something that I want to get into too much at this point.
All right, so Mr. Cohen, who asked that question, please submit your question to CV6 via email. Our information is on our website, and we'll do our best to address it. All right,
Yeah.
no more hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Then,
Actually, Reshma would like the floor.
Reshma.
Well, I mean, I was gonna answer that question if you wanted to, but we can just answer it through email later.
I think that's probably the better course of action. Now, we've got a lot to cover that is on our plate for now, and I think that's a very big topic, very complicated and difficult. Okay, so it's seeing no further hands. The public hearing for Community District 6 needs statement and budget request for fiscal year 22 is now closed, and we'll continue with the agenda. Okay, so here's what I propose. I promised that we wouldn't go through the list item by item. But I think what we're gonna do is go through the list item by item. But we can go through very quickly because we've already done it. We've already gone through most of these items. Some of the committee chairs have already commented. I think we have a couple that we want to focus on more carefully, and we will look at those. That's particularly why Corinne has joined us today, because a lot of the, there were three topics that were part of the district needs statement as our top 3 priorities. One was affordable housing, one was parks, and one was homelessness. And affordable housing and homelessness both fall within Corinne's committee. So she has several items on for our consideration. I'm not sure how we should do this, Corinne, but I'm thinking maybe just to go through the capital budget items, and the first few are on housing. If you have anything to add beyond the item itself, just feel free to join in. Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, just run the meeting and I'll raise my hand if I feel I need to add something.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
So the first item is to provide more housing for extremely low and low income households. This is an affordable housing item. And I think we can probably just continue that the way it is. Is there any objection for that being our lead item in capital? Okay, look, number 2, more housing for special needs households, such as the formerly homeless. I think what we're dealing with here is actually homeless families. And I think what we want to do is if we can find a request, what the city gives us is canned requests that we have to use. And this was the closest that we could find at the time. I'm going to look to see if there's another one that will focus our attention more on homeless families. And if so, we will do that.
Jim Collins requests the floor.
Jim, do you want to speak?
Jim, you're
Yep, I'm off, sorry. I just wanted to confirm this is budget priorities for fiscal year ending 2021.
This is the 2022 fiscal year, so it would be the one starting in July of 2021.
Okay, I thought we had talked about giving these budget priorities more specificity with respect to subsequent years. Am I mistaken in that? I thought that when we started the process for fiscal year ending 2022, that we were going to be more specific as to, particularly as respects the capital budget, rather than just saying direction of spending, basically amount of spending in terms of what's actually needed. So for example, if we wanted more affordable housing in terms of total units, total whatever. I thought that was a discussion that we had last year.
Robin Van Huenhoven requests the floor.
Brian?
So that is not a requirement for our submissions to the city. So at a bare minimum, what we need to do is figure out what our priorities are from the committees, form an appropriate text for the budget submission or budget priority submission, and hand it off to the district manager for input into the city's systems. It is our ideal that we improve requests by trying to get such numbers, and in the process of trying to get such numbers, also ask some questions about some of the requests in terms of, are they truly needed or not? Because if we can't dig up numbers, it might be a sign that it is an item that's being requested through this process that is not really going through the right channel to fulfill a need in the community. That said, we have a high amount of confidence for items 1 through 10 on this list, and we should proceed with them. And if anybody has a suggestion along the way of a minor text amendment to the submission, it would be appropriate. But we are not going to substantially shake this list upside down because certain submissions lack numbers. Particularly, some of the stuff is really important. Some of the stuff we will never get reliable numbers from the city. Some of the stuff just needs to go in as is, particularly items 1 through 10. If you have any questions about any of these items in particular, maybe we can discuss offline, or we can discuss at the committees for which those budget requests are submitted. We are also not here to discuss items of priorities for other committees. We're here to arrange things and try to improve these requests as much as possible. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. That does conform with what we've talked about in the past. And Jim, yes, it would be very nice if we had more specificity. These have to be submitted by the end of October, which means that they have to be approved by the full board in mid-October.
Right.
If we have any additional numbers by that time, we'll try. I think the more likely thing that we can do is we can probably do more about geography than we can about numbers.
Can we ensure that committee chairs are instructed specifically to come up with as much specificity in their budget requests as possible?
I think we can do that for next year, but I don't think we can do that between now and October.
No.
They've been given such
we really should.
We've covered it. Everything that I said has also been communicated to the chairs, and many of the chairs have been responsive to what we've.
Specificity?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not going to be perfect.
As we go through, you'll see that there is more, some items are more specific than others as far as dollar amounts and geographic locations and that sort of thing. So let's keep moving.
Rick, as you're moving forward, what's the distinction between item 2 and item 4?
They are unfortunately the request is identical, but in item 2 we're talking about homeless families, and in item 4 we're talking about folks that might be disabled, or they need some kind of supportive services to help.
I got it.
But that's the problem with some of this canned language.
Yeah.
Could I ask the board staff to put the link up for through the chat log, the link up to the budget priorities through the chat log?
You mean
just so we can follow along?
The Airtable that is being shared right now on your screen?
Right. Yes.
Okay, Brendan, can you?
Yeah, just copy paste that URL. It should work.
Yeah.
I'll do that right now.
It just makes it easier to read. I can't hardly see it on my screen.
Yeah, I'm actually using I printed out some other material because it's hard for me to follow. But the advantage of this Airtable, which is something that the board office devised, is it has everything we could need in a discussion, including things like when was it first put in, what agency was it referred to, what was the response? I mean, it's got everything in there. So I do recommend it as a source. Okay, so number 3, improve accessibility of transit infrastructure by providing elevators, escalators, etc. And then there's a whole bunch of specific locations listed there. The only thing I'd like to refer back to the Transportation Committee is the question of what's been done at Grand Central, and has that been taken into account in this write-up? Because I know that they've done some work at Grand Central on access points. But other than that, I think it looks like it should stay where it is if there's no objection. Okay, number 4, housing for special needs households. Again, this is what Claude was talking about. This is the supporting housing units. One of the things that has been a particular bugaboo for me is that that too often you'll have people experiencing homelessness put in a location and then given no support to help them get out of homelessness. It's just giving them a bed. So this is the kind of units, these are the kind of units that if they're going to be putting more homeless people in our district, they should be putting in the services that go along with helping those people find a way out of homelessness. And that's the nature of this item. Okay, number 5, capital projects to improve access to the waterfront. I don't think we have any questions about that. If there are any, please let me know. We've gone through these before. That's why I'm kind of running through them. The CC PEP at Bellevue, based on the responses that are there, I think we can probably get rid of this item. I was one of the people saying we should keep it, but I think we can at least make it a continuing support item because they're basically saying that the project is fully funded. If the project is fully funded, we don't need to waste a top 10 ranking on it. Does anyone object to having it become a continuing support? The only person I know who knows more about this than me on this would be Claude. Do you have any problem with that?
No, it's been up there for a while, and I think they do have the funding. So.
Okay. So we're going to make number 6 is going to move to continuing support just to make sure that it's done. And that would move everything up one level. Okay, security cameras at Strauss houses. That was one from before. Do we have any questions or comments about that one? Okay, I would just raise with, if Brendan, if you could make a note, it says supported by Solar One. I'm not sure that that makes any sense to me, but maybe it is. Could you take a look into that?
Which item again?
On number 7 in the capital budget priorities on security cameras.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why Solar One would be supporting that. I think it may be mislocated. It might be supporting something else.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to keep with the current numbering. 8 is new or expanded park or playground. This one, I wasn't familiar with this being in there last year, but it has identified some property that could be converted into a park. Since it was in there last year, I have no problem with keeping it there. Does anybody have anything to comment about this item? Okay, we're set with that location then. Reconstruct or upgrade a building in a park. And this has to do with the Asser Levy Recreation Center. There's a whole bunch of items here. I'm assuming they're still needed, but I can't guarantee that. We might need to get back to parks to find out whether they, just what Astor Levy needs. Clearly, we can keep the item. It's just a question of what the explanation would be. So does anyone have any problem with the office pulling together the language there for the explanation, just to make sure that it conforms to the current situation? Okay, good. Off we go. Next one, number 10. Renovate, upgrade, or provide new community board facilities and equipment. Considering the fact that we have a fairly new office and that we're currently in a situation where people are working remotely to a large extent, I don't feel comfortable with this as a number 10 item and would recommend that it be dropped to the end of the list of capital projects. Does anyone have a problem with that? Other than Jesus, of course. Boy.
Oh, I'm raising my
Oh,
hand.
I'm sorry. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven requests the floor. And
Brian.
just FYI, we haven't magnified the size of the text on the screen for those who were having trouble viewing it earlier.
Oh, good. Thank you. Brian.
This request also kind of lumps in the construction or provision of public space and assembly space, which would be a benefit to the community in any conditions. Although right now we're not doing any public assembly stuff. I think it's reasonable, given the juncture we're at, that we drop this a little bit on the list. But we're also looking at a very long time frame here for the city to provide capital funding for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to apply to whatever our situation is next month. I think the district would be better off if this quest was funded. I don't think it should be 30, but yeah, you can take it out of the top 10.
Yeah, there's a second public space item. So this one really is looking more at the district office being something that's owned by the city, and how you might use it in other ways beyond just the community board office. I agree. We want to keep this around because we may need to, it may be something that we're going to want to, as things change in the next year or two, we may want to do something with it, but it certainly we don't want it to take up the top 10.
Yeah, and if the text for the request basically makes it look like it's just asking for an office, then we should just edit it, because there was a broader vision involved on it.
Okay.
Jim Collins requests the floor.
Jim.
Yeah, Rick, I think maybe one of the things that a lot of private companies have done is allow their workers to get a small cash payment to reimburse for technical upgrades, things like a larger screen. If you're working from home on 8 hours a day and staring at a notebook screen, I think it would be appropriate if we included in the wording that so long as we're under this pandemic, or even just for the convenience of the employee occasionally, that we let them purchase or have the city purchase a technology upgrade for their own use for the employees. So a large screen, what have you.
Yeah, that could fit under, there's an expense, I think there's an expense item that speaks.
Yeah, that's right. It would be an expense item. It's not a capital item.
A basic operational cost, and I've already provided any upgraded screens or printers or any material to any member of the staff who wants it.
Great.
Good. Yeah, because that is something that people forget. They think, oh, well, we're saving all this money by people working at home. You're not, because the people working at home have to pay. If you're
right.
printing things out, you gotta have ink cartridges. You gotta.
Okay. All that's being provided to every member of staff.
Perfect. Okay.
Is that borough-wide, do you know, or city-wide?
I can't speak for them, but every community board is a separate agency. So for us, that's the case.
Okay.
I have
Claude
my hand
Winfield,
raised.
Claude Winfield requests the floor.
Claude,
I agree with moving the item concerning the new community board facilities, but I don't think we should move it too low and keep in consideration that even though Brookdale seems to be a passive issue, it is still within the budget, the Brookdale site, the sanitation garage, and we might consider that being incorporated in a request for whatever they're going to construct on that site.
what we might be able to do, now I'm having trouble finding the location of this. There's another item that talks about the potential for a multi-use public space that might include the district office, but might have other things as well.
I'm just trying to ensure that it appears in our district needs statement somewhere so that, you know, there's
Yeah.
evidence that we have a concern.
Yep, let's see if we can. Jesus, do you remember where that is?
I
Because-
actually don't think we have that. I'm not.
Maybe I'm confusing. Maybe this was the only item that was of concern. Okay, we don't want to get rid of it. You're absolutely right. Maybe we don't want it to be all the way at the very, very bottom. Let's put a hold on the numbering for now and come back to the numbering.
Just, we could also include it in the 197A proposal for the MSBI.
It's another possible location. I think what the idea was to have not just the office space, but to have a place where we could have community meetings. There is no place to have a socially distant meeting of the community board with all its visitors. I don't think there's any place that could take us. So
I don't know about public members, but I think in the auditorium at Beth Israel, the Hospital for Joint Diseases, that might be possible.
Joint diseases might be, yeah.
Yeah.
But it does limit it, and then you have a landlord in effect,
yeah,
who may or may not want to have those kind of functions. So it's something that we don't want to lose track of this, but we don't need it in the top.
I do recollect though that there was some discussion in the 197A group about having, you know, public space like for a senior center or something of that nature. So
yeah,
it might be possible.
Okay. So next one is rehabilitate bridges. The only question I had is, the comment here is that the project has been included in the 10-year plan, which means to me that maybe it could be a continuing support. Is anyone familiar with the Waterside Plaza pedestrian bridge situation?
Yeah, I am. And we've been putting this on the list for years, and every time we get the response from DOT that in fact they do have an overall plan to comply with the federal laws about ADA. And they've got a list of bridges and a list of years that they're following out. And so that's what you said is pretty much exactly the case. They will get to it. They'll get to it when they get to it.
Okay. So we have a choice of leaving it where it is, moving it down the list, or moving it to continuing support. Do we have any opinions about that?
I have an opinion.
Yeah, no, as far as I know, I have not seen anybody put forward a budget or anything like that for this. It is only a plan. So if you're it's being listed with budgetary backing as the way to move it from capital to continuing support, this doesn't have that, at least as far as I know.
Okay. And Brian, you had a comment?
Yeah, I would say that if there's any issue with this request, it's not how it's phrased or where it is on the list. The issue is that we now need the full backing of community activists to get this thing moving, because we are being straight up ignored on it.
Okay, let's leave it where it is. And we'll, for now, I mean, if we need to make a change, it's something we could play with, but it looks like we might as well just leave it where it is. One of the things that they do is they look at where the OMB and the various agencies here, the Department of Transportation, will look at its ranking. And if we continue to rank it fairly high, it'll eventually get done. But I'm not a big optimist about when these things get done. Okay, so the next one is provide technology upgrade, and it looks like it's PS 116 security system. I think we can take out the reference in the description about early voting, because I don't think they're doing early voting at PS 116. But other than that, there's no reason to say if they don't have a security system, they probably should. Okay, we'll leave that the way it is. Other transportation infrastructure, post office trucks. I don't know what to do with this, because technically the post office is not under our jurisdiction. And if those people want to park wherever they want to park, they're going to park there.
They're not going to listen to us.
Yeah, but we could, I mean, we got another item here that talks about buses, like it's interstate buses that come into town. They just sit on the and idle as well. If we said that there should be a parking facility for buses and, for example, post office trucks, would that make any sense? I mean, otherwise, I just don't see any point in keeping something related to buses. I mean, the neighborhood was really annoyed with all those trucks taking up parking spaces and blocking the streets, and it was a service issue for sure. But I just don't know if it's worthy of a budget request here. Anybody?
Honestly, not to interrupt, are you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. We were trying to find we were talking about a couple of spots for the bus parking that were basically more in Midtown. The post office problem is basically in the 20s around the post office.
Yeah.
I really seriously doubt that the USPS would cooperate by parking their vans and trucks in Midtown just to get them off our streets. So in practical terms.
So combining doesn't make any sense.
So Rick, it's B. I've been trying to raise my hand. I just think you're out of your jurisdiction when you're dealing with the post office and federal stuff. I think you should really deal with things that you can influence in an agency.
Yeah.
I don't, the post office is one of them.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
I also see that Brian has his hand raised.
Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, I guess we can, if we don't think that the post office truck thing is a big deal, we can take it away. I think that if it feels like it's kind of a weird request, it's still something where, post office trucks are routinely stored on the street for several different post offices. So, this would benefit the district, the people who are dealing with it. The bus thing, is a bus thing a different request? I guess it's 16. Again, something that would tremendously benefit the district because of the amount of difficult situation caused by the bus volumes. And we need the buses. We need transit. I don't think we're going to get fewer buses or less demand for buses anytime soon. So that seems to be the direction to go in.
Yeah. So I'd like a sense of, should we remove this item or should we leave this item? I think we eliminated the possibility of combining the item.
Yeah, I had my hand raised.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with B, and speaking from experience, my brother was a supervisor of those trucks in the Bronx at 149th Street. I can tell you they're not going to listen to us.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any objection to us eliminating item number 13? Okay, it's gone. Okay. New and expanded parks facility, recreation center. New comfort station at Murphy Brothers Playground. Now, one of the things, Corinne, are you still around?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
I am.
good. This, what I was thinking was, what we might do here is expand this to include your comments about comfort station, restroom facilities that are needed. And do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I'm sure most of you have heard in the news just a big issue that comes up with the unsheltered among us is that they, because of COVID, because the libraries are closed, anywhere where people were creatively trying to do something that needs to be done, those places are now closed. And so what happens is, and I was just spent an hour and a half listening to people about the Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza and the problems there. Belvedere South Park has a big problem of people, using flower beds and stairwells and children's playgrounds as bathrooms. Our unsheltered aren't going away anytime soon. And regardless, I mean, people need to use restrooms. And so our request from HHHR, our new request is a focus on creating public restrooms across,
Well,
is that enough, Rick, or do I have to say?
Absolutely, absolutely, because I wanted folks to know that it was coming from the committee, and that the basic principle there is, if you're released from a homeless shelter in the morning and you can't return until the evening, just what are you supposed to do? And it's a question to me of basic of dignity. And giving people a way that they don't have to do something that they'd rather not. Now, there's always going to be crazy people, but we also need to accommodate those people who have no other choice. And what I was thinking of doing was expanding. Corinne has given some language to get us started, but to expand this item to be like more than one location, where we would have some kind of restroom solution, such as the kind of elaborate porta potties they were at one time were espousing. The ones with like self-cleaning and had water and that kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah, the Bloomberg administration bought, I believe, 20 or 25 and are still in storage somewhere.
Right.
They were never installed.
Yeah, and people have pointed out to me that they've been very hard to get because people were trying to get them for the waterfront, and it required special plumbing, it required this and required that. But I don't think we should just, if it's just because it's difficult to do, doesn't mean that we shouldn't include it as something that is an aspirational item. And it also shows that we care. I mean, these budget items are more than just dollars and cents. They also set a tone and a policy from the community board. And I think one of the things that would be very nice to be able to expand this. Would anybody have any objection to having this item expanded to include, say, 4 locations. And I would leave it for Corinne's committee to give us some language for the explanation.
If I could just interject something, I mean, Murphy's Brothers Playground in particular is part of the whole ESCR thing. That is going to be redone. So if you really want to move on that park in this direction, it'd probably be a good idea to show up jointly with land use in some form when those presentations are going down, because those plans are pretty much set now. They start work this month. Not on Murphy's Brothers per se, but on the whole East River redo.
That's a very good, helpful observation. Maybe we could maybe we'll just make the other restrooms a totally separate item. Keep the Murphy Brothers one. Do you know if the comfort station is part of the plan for the ESCR?
There is a comfort station as I remember, but the details I don't. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Rick?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
There was a request for a comfort station somewhere like around 20th Street, but I think it got lost in the task force discussions. So it is appropriate to try to bring it back up.
Now, would you say as part of the ESCRI discussions it was 23rd Street, or just in general?
In general, and if you can get it through the ES whatever, yes. But it's less than that budget.
Jim Collins requests the floor.
Jim.
Yeah, I was just going to say that insofar as locating these things and locating them near the waterfront, perhaps the best place to put a toilet would be near the ferry, the 21st Street, I think it is.
Yeah, that's where I was saying that we were looking at. Yeah.
But the other thing is, I just pulled up an article I sent to Corinne, but I can send it to the committee. These toilets, when we got into them in 2006, 2007, somewhere in there, and I think the contract was inked in 2006. They actually required a payment of 25 cents to use it, and then there was a self-cleaning facility after you closed the door. So perhaps going forward, they should be done by some kind, maybe the equivalent of a fare card, or some kind of debit card that could be distributed to homeless free, so that they can use them for free. Instead of a quarter or whatever, you take a quarter from a homeless guy, you're going to have an argument.
Yeah. Okay. So how any suggestions on how best to approach this? We could keep Murphy Brothers Playground as an item, and then a second item be an additional number where we would identify locations, hopefully, and then add a catch-all thing. This one, it sounds like this one is that they're looking for a full comfort station, which I'm not quite sure what that means, but.
It's a washroom, basically. It's a toilet with a wash space.
Would it have like a person present to?
No. It's totally automated, at least the ones that were.
Corinne requests the floor.
Corinne.
No, I just want to say that I agree with having it as a separate item. And then, we already started the language, and I know that Rich Mintz is actually editing the Google Doc while this meeting's going on. So I'm curious to see what he's coming up with, but we can definitely work on that more. And happy to take any suggestions. And thank you, Jim, for suggesting some kind of EBT card or whatever we would want to call it.
Yeah, it's just a debit card.
Yeah.
Well, and it helps make sure that it's targeted to the people who actually need it, as opposed to somebody who might want to use it for some other purpose. Yeah. Okay, so where would we put the additional sanitation items? Like if we have the additional comfort stations, we have to stick it someplace in this priority list. Shall we just put it at like right after the one for Murphy's Brothers, or right before it, or why don't we put it right? My suggestion is we'll put it right after the Murphy's Brothers one, so that they're together. The only other choice would be to raise it so that it gets more attention.
My vote's to raise it. I'm only one person though.
Also don't get a vote.
Yeah. And I'm not on the committee. I don't get to vote. Thank you.
And not to emphasize it, but we also don't want you to be too greedy because you've got like half the top 10 anyway.
So Rick, this is B.
Yes, B.
I actually think you should raise it. This is a community of life issue. This affects a lot of people. If you don't have these facilities, I think it is something that the city, won't look at if it's lower. Unfortunately, a lot of the services to homelessness, you've seen what has happened. So I would vote to raising it because I think it affects everyone.
How about we're moving down? We took out the CPAP, we can put it as number 6. Do we want to go higher than that? Accessibility, transit, special needs.
Are you able to scroll so we can see where it's at, so we can kind of figure out how we want to put it, right? Because right now it starts off with 12.
Oh yeah, could you scroll for us, Brendan? Okay, so the numbers there are in if you look at the column that's FY21 rank, what we've done is we've moved item 6 to continuing support. And I was just going to raise everything else, but we can stick something in there or we can put it any place. I mean, we don't have to, it can be any place there. I think it belongs above the pedestrian bridge. So I think we're talking, we need it to be in the top 10. That's all I can say. We definitely need it to be in the top 10 so it gets the proper scrutiny.
Well, I think it should really go, this is B, after your health facility. Am I looking at it right? That would be 7.
Item 7, no.
No, what am I looking at then? Because I see 6, provide a new and expanded healthcare facility.
That's 6. Oh, 6. I see. You're saying you make it 7. Well, actually, we've taken that number 6 out. So we could replace the number 6 item with the restroom item. Yeah,
This is Reshma. I mean, maybe it should be even above having the continuous esplanade, because while that's nice, it is not, to your point, that this is giving dignity to people to have a comfort station, to have a place.
Well, that's a good point.
Rick, one thing OMB has sort of told us off the record is that boards needn't really agonize like over, should it be 6 or should it be 7? Should it be 12 or should it be 13? So get it in the general neighborhood and they can sort of work with that.
Okay.
So why don't we just use Occam's razor and put it in number 6?
Thank you. I was going to just say that.
Yep, it's easiest. Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
easiest thing to do.
Easiest thing is we'll make that number 6. So number 6 will now be the restroom issues with information to be provided by Corinne and Company.
We'll make a note of that and we'll update it in the next day or 2.
One of the things that you may want to do is site specific, so that, that they apparently all go through transportation according to the article I'm reading now that I sent to Corinne. apparently they all go through the Department of Transportation, and
Huh.
they're the ones that have final authority as to whether or not a site is proper. Apparently, they've tried to put some in Brooklyn in what were deemed residential areas, and the community board rejected it. But if we're citing it, ourselves with some degree of specificity, which I think is always important.
This is the kind of specificity that we can do. We can say it should be near 23rd Street. It should be 23rd and 1st location, or it should be in Stuyvesant Square Park, or it should be in at Catherine Hepburn Park on 47th Street.
Apparently, they've got over a dozen of them that are still outstanding under the contract. The contract's going to expire in 12 years.
Yeah. I think the idea that we could actually get them, though, I think is pretty slim. But we got to go on the record. We got to get them. We got to, we got to push on a few things, and this is one that I feel comfortable pushing on. Okay, so we got that taken care of. Where are we? 7, 8, 9, 10.
I think to 15, since the committee was discussing the Murphy's Brothers Park Comfort Station before.
Yes, thank you. Where was that?
13.
So Murphy's Brothers was 14.
Gotcha.
Just in terms of addressing that, I would strongly suggest getting input from the Manhattan Kickers Soccer League and the Stuyvesant Town Little League. Find out whether and if they're supported, because those folks can muster hundreds of people if they oppose it, thousands of people actually. If they oppose it.
For something at Murphy's Brothers?
Yes.
We're going to be looking for supporting documentation on some of these. So if they're willing to support it, that'll be really good.
Right, but as I say, I would talk to them before committing a potential site there, because you can always move it somewhere else. You could move it, if they oppose it, then it dies.
Yeah.
If they don't, fine, but if they oppose it, you may lose it. You know what I'm saying?
Talking about a specific corner or something like that.
Yes.
Not the concept itself. They would probably welcome the concept, I think. Well, maybe not. Okay, that's good. Brendan, can you make a note of that for me, please? For us, please. That we need those two. What was the two organizations, Jim?
The Peter Stuyvesant Little League and the Manhattan Kickers Soccer League. And you may not want to put it at Murphy's Brothers. You may want to put it up where the older kids play, which is near the Con Ed field. There's a parking lot across the street that Con Ed uses, and that may be on that block. It's probably more suitable.
Yeah.
Those little kids, you get them in the toilet, they're going to stay there all day.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they wouldn't be the ones using that. The idea.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would.
Okay.
So just double checking the Peter Stuyvesant.
I ran my boys back to the toilet multiple times.
Yeah. Okay.
So just double checking the Peter Stuyvesant Little League, and then the other entity is
the Manhattan Kickers Soccer League.
Okay, so we want to keep rolling here. The precinct.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven, request the floor.
Brian.
Yeah, just really quickly, we shouldn't really discuss citing in this committee. If we have any comments on that, that should be absolutely discussed in the host committee for the request, not in our committee. We just need to be really, we should stick to that because we're disenfranchising parks from having a meaningful debate on it. It's their responsibility.
That's a good point. I would also say that what we could do is we could make a recommendation, but refer it to parks before it goes into any document.
I would suggest a joint committee between transportation and parks, because transportation, like I said, Department of Transportation has ultimate oversight on these. Most of these are located on sidewalks or near sidewalks.
Okay, you're making it more and more likely that it's not going to have any specificity whatsoever. I don't think we have time to get all that done. But anyway, we'll work on it. On we go to number 15. Precinct houses. This project was funded in a prior fiscal year and the scope is now underway. I suggest we delete this item. Anybody?
What was the item?
Delete the whole item.
What is the item? I can't read it.
I'm sorry. Renovate or upgrade existing precinct houses. So it would be upgrades for the 13th and the 17th precinct houses. There was primarily the 13th, I think. No, it's the 13th only.
And you want to delete it? Why?
Because the response from the NYPD was, this project was funded in a prior fiscal year and the scope is now underway. So they don't need it. It's not for any kind of political reason. It's just, it's funded. So we can get rid of the number 15. Other transit infrastructure requests. This is the buses and where they go. I think we need to keep that. I know transportation has done a lot of work on that, so unless somebody has any objection, we'll just keep that item. Okay. 17, a new or renovate up or upgrade an existing public library. There is some question about whether the Epiphany Library needs the external things that we thought it needed. And it's been recommended that the item be removed.
Sandra visited the library, the Epiphany Library, and was told by the library manager that interior work was no longer needed.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to visit, and this would have to come from the committee, but I'd like to see whether whether the libraries actually need to make internal changes to make them safe in things like the shutdown, so that you can socially distance and keep the libraries open, at least in part, during a shutdown. The libraries are a source of computer usage for some people. They're a source of books for others. They're community gathering places. If it can be done, if some of these older buildings can be retrofitted to make it work, I think that would be really nice. If we can't, then we can get rid of the item altogether. But if this is an opportunity to respond to the virus and how it's affecting our community, maybe this is one of the ways we can do it. Anybody have any suggestions about that?
Rick, this is B. I just want to comment on it because I'm dealing in my professional life with the vulnerable population. And what I have seen in what I'm dealing with it is having the lack of access to the libraries for the ability to get on various websites and internet applications are really hampering the low social economic because they just don't have that kind of facility. So I would wholeheartedly support that. I've actually seen it professionally, a decline in people applying for need.
Okay. If I can convince Pam to shift this to an interior alteration, and if we have time to do it, do I have the consent of the committee to try that? Hearing none.
So moved. I was gonna say, so moved.
Yeah, and seconded, yes.
What I'll do is I'll contact Pam. I'll talk to Pam, who is, I think, the one who said, let's get rid of it. We don't need it. But we don't need it in the way that it's framed. We need it in the way that we needed to think about it a little more creatively and responsibly. So I'll talk to Pam. That's Pam Vassal, who's the, just for the record, Pam Vassal is the chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee that also deals with libraries, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. Okay, reconstruct or upgrade a park or amenity. In this case, it's irrigation and water access for Peter Detmold Park. This was suggested it be removed. I'm not sure how that came up. Maybe it came from the committee.
So I can, Rick, I'm on the Parks Committee.
Yeah.
And so we were told by Parks that that issue was taken care of.
Okay. I can't say that I've seen it. I've been in that park, and I haven't seen anything. But I guess, you know, things take a while.
Brendan,
Yeah, so that maybe it's something we should double check.
Brendan,
Yeah.
Brendan, have we heard from Dean Stephanidis about this, since he lives in that area and works in that park?
I believe Dean did comment and say that the request was no longer necessary.
Okay.
We'll double check.
I can dig up that email to double check.
Well, if we, thank you. If you could double check, but otherwise we'll get rid of that item. Reconstruct or upgrade a building in a park, Ralph Bunch Park. Pavers.
The problem with this one is that there's scaffolding in the way, and until that scaffolding is removed, there's really not much progress that can be made.
This is one of the things that's been on the list forever. Well, if the committee says get rid of it, we'll get rid of it. Yes.
Rick, don't
Yes.
get rid of it, please. It's unwalkable. It really is. It's been, as you know, for years.
Yeah.
That scaffolding should be down because 45 took down their scaffolding, and that's 45 scaffolding.
Huh. Okay.
45 Tudor City Place is scaffolding. And I understand that has been down because they have the restaurant on Tudor City Place. That's on First Avenue with the scaffolding that you're referring to, but that's all part of that same building.
Yeah, and the response is that basically the city's not going to do it from the parks budget, but that we might be able to get money from the borough president or council member. It could also be, what's that process?
Participatory budgeting?
Yes, participatory budget item. Maybe we should leave it the way it is. Let's hold on to that one and not remove it. I think having the testimony of a Tudor City person is good enough for me. Okay, upgrade the elevators. Elevators, renovated. Locker room and elevators. I thought that was all done at 54th Street.
We can reach out to the Parks Department Director of Rec Centers to see if she can confirm.
Yeah,
this work still needs to be done.
Yeah, I thought that the roof, they've been working on that. I thought that roof was completed like 5 years ago.
So again, Rick, the issue with that roof was, and again, this was pre-COVID when they came and spoke to the committee, but they wanted to, the roof was done, but it's not accessible to people right now. And they didn't have enough space because they were trying to use the other areas of the rec center for both children during the day, but there were seniors who also wanted to use the facilities, and they thought that they could have fitness classes on the roof for seniors.
Well, I like that. You know? Okay, well, why don't we just keep it then?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is Murphy Brothers Playground. Add a dog run. For some reason, that's put down as, why not? Any objection to that item? Okay.
Again, just real quick, Rick, I'd suggest that I don't remember the status of the dog run in the ESCR redo of Murphy's Brothers Park, but somebody better check it because this is already happening. This is in process. So we should find out what they've actually proposed in detail for that.
Okay.
Just on that dog run, I took it up with somebody from Councilmember Powers' staff, and apparently everybody was on board with it. It was a while ago. That was easily last year, maybe 2 years ago. So I presume that the East Side Coastal Resiliency is built into it. I would hope.
Yeah, but I don't know either. So that's why I'm saying somebody check. Yeah.
Okay, check. Keep it, but check with the ESCRI plans. Okay. Upgrade subway stations, other transit infrastructure. Second Avenue subway. You know, we've been putting that on here. There's not, as far as I know, is there any city money that's going towards the Second Avenue subway?
Rick,
Yes.
number one, I don't think the language reads correctly to repair and upgrade. You're talking about building a new subway line, not repairing and upgrading. And stage 2 is going to have to be done before you even consider stage 3. And stage 2 is almost partially done because the tunnels are built up to about 110th Street, and they're nowhere near getting to that. They're trying to get all of the funding for that. And the third stage of the Second Avenue subway requires a special kind of boring because of the rock underneath. So I don't know why we have that up on the agenda so prominently, because it's light years away.
Okay, let's drop that one to the bottom.
I see Brian has his hand raised.
Brian.
So just for some context, the whole thing where it says repair or upgrade subway stations or other infrastructure, that's a result of the city and OMB giving us a drop-down box in which that's the most appropriate thing to click. That's not our text that we're submitting on that. That is 99.9% probably the correct drop-down thing to pick in the city's system. Just we have limited options. We should continue to pursue capital funding on this, and maybe it's fine at the bottom of the list as long as it's on the list. Maybe it's fine in the middle of the list, but this is just another thing where it's like we need people around the city, including our electeds and the governor, to feel like this is a super important issue to us, that we are not going to shut up until this is funded, and that we're going to not make life easy for them until there's actual movement on this. Claude's pretty much on the mark about the second phase, but the problem is that they're saying that outfitting the second phase with stations and a little bit more tunnel is going to cost $10 billion. So we're not getting a good, I mean, the whole situation is maybe beyond the purview of the board, but we just need to keep fighting for that capital money for the third phase while we insist that that second phase either get completed or not hold up what we need.
We need to push our congressperson as long as they're there.
Yeah.
We need to vote in November.
Well, that's the one that's been getting the money.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Honestly, just to finish a little bit what Brian said, the only way this makes any sense to me at all is if we put this in the category that we did with the Queens Bridge at full board, where it's something that we put it somewhere on the list farther down and use it as something that the planning gets to the point where it's shovel ready, so that if the feds decide to infuse money into the city for projects for infrastructure, we've got some stuff there. But other than that, yeah, Claude's right. I mean, this may happen in the lifetime of, I don't know, 2,300, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I do think that getting money from the feds on this would be really nice. I think that that gives a big free pass to the state government for not investing.
Right now,
enough.
the state government doesn't have any money. So what we're trying to do is, if we want to keep this item, what I'm suggesting is
true.
that we look at it as something that we put in that category, like the Queens Bridge, where it's like something that we're looking for the future. We're hoping for infrastructure infusion from the feds. And if we get that, then we have to have projects that are ready to go, or at least planned out enough so that they're believable, so that the feds will actually put some money toward it, whether it's just beginning the thing or whatever.
So the only other thing I'm going to throw in here for color is that the very next transportation related item to DOT is curb cuts. If we want to say that the curb cuts are more important than the subway, we can sequence it that way, but
no, I wasn't saying anything like that. And in fact, the curb cuts are, especially when it's something like that, remediate drainage for curb cuts at intersections. I can tell you straight up that unless there is a specific locale or specific list, nothing is going to happen.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that we would be prioritizing it on our list of requests. And in this process, we should not be requesting individual curb cuts. We need to request that the DOT be infused with capital for doing a program around the district to do this kind of thing.
No, actually what we need to do is have DOT do surveys, planning surveys, and to decide which areas actually need them. But look, we're getting off topic, and this is something that has to happen inside the transportation committee, not here.
That's
correct.
Let's
bring that conversation over to transportation for an agenda
So,
item.
if I can comment, I think I'm listening to the comments. I think we should keep the Second Avenue subway on the symbolism, even though I agreed with Court. It'll be past our lifetimes, but it's very symbolic that people can kind of get around and can keep moving to Congress, the feds, and the state. So I think we should leave it on the list. Where it goes on the list, I don't really care, but I think it needs to be there.
Okay, let's leave it where it is. It used to be number one. Five years ago, it was the number one item. It's worked its way down to 11. We'll let it go, or whatever it is, 21. 21. No, 22. Okay, let's keep going, because I really do want to get through these things, and I'm taking far longer than I intended to. My apologies.
Rick, it looks like Asia Body has raised her hand.
Asia, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much, guys. I just wanted to check because I was a little late joining. I was curious if you guys had spoken about the capital budget request for a senior center.
No.
I can't see on the screen how far down it is. That's why. I
haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, I'll wait then. I'll wait for when you guys get there.
Good. That would be very. I do need some help with that. Okay, let's keep going, and we'll catch up. St. Barton's Park. Wasn't there something recently done with St. Barton's Park? It's 23rd, item 23.
Yes, I mean, they presented a rebuild plan to us and it's all done. So I don't know if they still need funding. I mean, I can check with the park people or with Pam on that.
Okay. If it doesn't require funding, we can make it continuing support. And if it has not yet been funded, then we'll keep it at 23.
Okay.
And if you could do that, Reshma, that'd be great. If you can do it this week.
Yeah, I can do it tomorrow morning. So.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay. Install streetscape improvements, curb cuts. It from the response, it definitely does sound like it needs specific locations, but if we haven't been given them by the committee, I guess we'll just let that go. If the committee can come up with some, it was my understanding these things are done in that the drainage kind of curb cuts are done on a schedule, and they're not going to vary the schedule. We're not talking about curb cuts that happen when there's a construction project going on. We're talking about curb cuts that are deemed essential to clear out intersections and things.
Rick, you're right. The curb cuts are done on a schedule and they're done through one contractor. So they will designate how many they're gonna do with that contract. And that's what they'll do because 24th Street took us 8 years to get.
Yeah. The comments from the Department of Transportation was sidewalks are the responsibility of adjacent property owner, which has nothing to do with anything. And for curb repair, please submit specific locations to the Borough Commissioner for review. For pedestrian ramps, the executive budget includes a citywide allocation. Specific locations are determined by DOT. So basically, if you don't have specific locations, you're not getting anything. And even then, you're not likely to get anything. So yeah, I think this is, unfortunately, has to be one that this is the way the committee has submitted it. If those members of this committee who are on transportation want to pursue that specific locations, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll just leave it the way it is. It's a totally ineffective request, but we'll leave it the way it is. Okay, park safety through design interventions, better lighting. That's asking for a security system for Bellevue South Park. I think we have to leave that one. If anything, we could move it up, but let's leave it where it is. Enhance park safety through design interventions. In this case, we're talking Dag Hammarskjöld Park. We definitely have to have something about that because of the complaints from the community. We can leave it where it is. More and better equipment to a library. Again, here's another place we could put in the impact of the pandemic on the closings. This one, in this write-up, we specifically mentioned the computers. We were talking about the other one. That was the item about Epiphany Library. Maybe we can consolidate the two. That would be item 17 and 27. Maybe we can have a single item that talks about resources for the library. Well, no.
I think this is a cool thing to inquire about on the off season. Like maybe we can ask if they feel like that would be effective.
Yeah. Well,
I'd suggest they do. I agree that we should inquire about it, and I think it should be actually probably one item because we're talking about, as B pointed out, the libraries are places that people go not to get books so much as to use the equipment and to get access to online, and they need that stuff now more than ever. So whether that's going to happen or not is something else. But I mean, the two items are clearly related.
They're clearly related, but is one a structural design change and the other an equipment design change?
That's a good question.
And maybe those need to be separated.
I think they would be separated. One is in physical infrastructure and the other is, and isn't that an expense item anyway?
Frequently, well, no, they're talking about fiber optic cabling.
Oh, okay.
We're just talking about computer stations, and yes.
Yeah.
But when they're talking about wiring and stuff, then it gets into it. Okay, let's leave it where it is, and we'll do two items just to emphasize the point. But we're going to definitely redo number 17 to reflect making the space usable and for people in tough situations. Okay, improve access to a park or amenity. Tudor City's ramps on 42nd Street. This comes up all the time. Reshma, what's going on in your neighborhood?
Well, first of all, I actually did. I've gone to check on this several times now for CB6, and I mean, the one issue is no one is claiming responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Right. There's I mean, if you ask transportation, DOT is saying, oh, it's the Tudor City's responsibility. Tudor City is saying it's DOT. There was even someone who said it's the park's responsibility, you know, so.
Yeah.
Excuse me, it's the city's responsibility. We did not build those stairwells. That used to be a roadway that went up. Cars went east and west. Underneath the bridge was a trolley. They tore that down to when the UN came in. I've seen pictures of this. And so those stairwells and the ramps going up, Tudor City doesn't even exist, hasn't existed since 1987. And we use the name because that's, you know, was the original name. But there were 14 buildings. Then Hemsley bought it and he tried to ruin it. And we went to, go online and look at the lawsuit. It's pages and pages. That was to save our parks. So you can't blame anything on us. And they've tried the Tudor City Association. I have told the office on many times, we do not own anything. We own stationery. That's it.
The problem, Paige, is that we're not accusing anybody of anything. The city just won't take responsibility. And the city doesn't take responsibility. So
Well,
what do we do with their request? I mean,
let somebody start a lawsuit. They'll take responsibility straight away when they get they have to go to court. That's
okay.
about the only way I see them taking responsibility.
So what do you want to do with this request?
Well, I think what are we going to do? The city has to take responsibility.
Okay, we're gonna leave 28 alone and let them figure it out.
Yeah, and just to quickly interject, I've also been dealing with this as a service request and basically second what Reshma has said, that basically everything that Reshma said is what I've experienced as well.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, 29, improve traffic and pedestrian safety, traffic calming, walkway counters. I don't know what this is, but if it comes from transportation, I assume somebody can, what's going on here? Because the response is sidewalks are the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. For curb repair, please submit specific location. What does that have to do with walkway counters?
Yeah, so this came from, this was suggested to the Transportation Committee. Adam Hartke had a much more solid idea of the exact equipment to buy based on his professional work. And essentially, counters for walking and biking would be really good for the district and actually are pretty cheap. They're barely a capital request because we're like basically trying to buy something that's maybe $8,000 a piece. And so we're bundling them as like a request for 7 or 8 of them to get them in the capital plan. So we're like, maybe this would be easy. Maybe we get a grant for this. Maybe this be paid for by a council member because DOT could certainly use the data. And for some reason, it's back on our list.
So
there's no capital request too small for an agency to give us a total non sequitur rejection.
Yeah. Now, what's being counted? People crossing the street?
People walking past, essentially, or biking past in case of a dual purpose counter.
Okay, so it's like the people that stand out there with the little clickers.
Yes.
counting cars as they go by, except in this case, it's people and bikes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I guess we can leave it. Build or expand incubator or affordable work or research lab spaces. It seems fine to me. Has anybody got any comments about that?
Rick, the EDC put out a RFP probably in 2015 for this type of location. They were primarily looking at, in our area, looking at 26th Street. What's the building called there? It's not a workable building anymore. A research building was, they do infectious disease. Is that 26th Street on First Avenue?
26th and First,
Yeah, 26th and First Street.
like the medical examiner's building?
Yeah, but no, on the west side of the street.
The public health lab?
Yeah, the public health lab. That building is almost non-usable. And they were looking at that location. I'm told it's similar to like Bellevue, where it has small things, and the only good thing in that building is the auditorium. So it hasn't gone anywhere since 2015.
Well, what the heck? Let's see if we can get some more life science people coming in. Improve this Murphy Brothers overpass. Have we really? Did we give up on this one?
Years ago, I had advocated to get a traffic island in there between the crossing from Stuyvesant Town into Murphy's Brothers Park, just because I had nightmares of little kids getting run over. So they put an island in there. It was under Garodnick when he was council member, and that was just a solution to an overall problem. I mean, now the traffic light is, I think they've improved the timing of the traffic light. And in any event, you can make this crossing in 2 separate stages, but it used to be you would cross in a single stage. And with, you got a 6-year-old in tow and a baby in a stroller, it was impossible to do.
Well, that's impossible to do anyway.
That's true.
all you need is a puppy.
Scared the death out of me when my boys were little. So
it looks like the Parks Committee has suggested we remove that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
In the conversations for ESCR, this was never brought up, and so in the plans, it's not included. So,
okay, so it's gone. And 32 is playground, upgrade a park, and a MacArthur Park. That's a kid's playground. I'm surprised that they chose to take out this request. But that's what the committee did, I guess, right? Nobody in the office did that, right?
This was a preliminary review by the committee chair and vice chair themselves. So it hasn't gone, all of these items that are slated for removal, that's how they've gotten that way. It has not gone before the entire committee yet. But the vice chair and the committee chair raised questions about why this park needed this, because we have no data to suggest that it does.
Okay. I think we can add that to the list of things to talk to Pam about, but probably take it out. And now we come to the create a new senior center or other facility for seniors, which is listed as the last item for some reason. And Ozzy, was there something you wanted to just listen into the conversation, or did you want to make a point?
I didn't know it had gone down to the last item in the capital budget request, but this has been on our capital budget request at least for 10 years, if not longer, maybe 15 or 20, I've heard. And my understanding is that the Department for the Aging doesn't have the capacity to build more senior centers. What they have done is implemented senior centers when there have been other developments, sort of like as a public benefit. But on the flip side, what we did when I was chair of health and education was, since we knew that we weren't going to get the capital funding, we encouraged and pushed for programming funding for programs that would help older adults. So we saw a greater use of like the library started doing falls prevention programming and programming for older adults. And we actually asked for that and saw that happen at Kips Bay Library and some of the other libraries. So I am hesitant to completely remove it, but it's one of those pieces that most likely will never get built. And I wonder if maybe doing something like a multicultural community center, multi-age community center may be better as an option if we want to continue to have public spaces that communities can use.
I was going to suggest that it may require moving this to the expense.
I was going to say that, yeah.
And then
Rick,
focus on programming. Yes, Claude.
but this is kind of being looked at in terms of the 197A in terms of the Mount Sinai site. There's an interest in doing intergenerational housing and stuff on that property. So it is a consideration. And the only thing that I agree with us here is that since I've been on the board, we've been going in reverse. We've lost consistently more and more senior centers. We've lost at least two or three that I know of that we used to have.
Yeah.
So
I reached out to the Parks Committee just a couple of days ago. I'm sorry, the Health and Education Committee. I haven't heard back from John, but I did hear back from Abigail. And they're gonna look into what the needs are at the Stein Center. Because at a minimum, they're gonna need to redo the configuration of some of those spaces. If they're gonna need to have socially distant activities, those places are not set up for that. And
there's a real need to reach out to the Stein Center. They haven't necessarily been that collaborative in terms of working with us over the last 5-6 years. So there's a real need there.
Yeah.
They've had some instability in their leadership. I think part of that's been the problem. But I do think that my only thing, Claude, is I think it's really awesome that the 197A will look into having an intergenerational housing and maybe hopefully associated community center, but that's still at like 17th and 18th Street, and the Stein Center is at 23rd Street. Still are missing the middle. The big piece of this was having something that was in the middle of the district, because we know that people really are hesitant to go more than 10-15 blocks, right? And most older adults walk. So the libraries was an option because there were more of those if there were hospitals. But I do think, I'm just thinking we need to think, yeah.
Let's do this. Let's keep this item. We'll rework the explanation so that it's a little bit more flexible like it could fit into the 197A discussion. Then in the expense, which we're going to turn to next, I'm going to just skip the continuing support items. I want to get to the expense items. And in the expense items, we'll find a way to say something about programming and how to deliver services in this new environment. Because I think a lot of it, even, I can't remember where I saw this, but there was something about the seniors in our district are less likely to go to a senior center than they are to take advantage of a single program, like a class or some kind of activity on a one-off basis, or even a course that might be several, but they're not really into it for the lower priced lunch so much. And who knows whether that'll ever be something that they can do again. But if we have
at Stein is the Yiddish singing group.
And they have a mean belly dancing class.
Yes, and the belly dancing.
And I just add that the way the Department of Aging funds these centers is based on meals served.
Yeah.
And if they can't serve meals, it's a real problem.
I don't know how the funding's going right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we all okay with moving on to the expenses? Let's see if we can finish this off in 30 minutes or less. Is that okay?
Yes.
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 Less.
10 minutes or less is good. Yeah.
Okay. The number one item here is runaway and homeless youth requests. And it talks about the services required for children in homelessness. I'm not sure that that should be our number one item. I would suggest that number 2 and number 1 be switched, and that our number 1 be the homeless outreach teams. Maybe I'm nitpicking. If people think I'm nitpicking, that's okay with me. Tell me. But I think both are valuable. Both are valuable items. It's just a question of we do need to get Corinne's write-up on the street outreach programs, and she's already working on that, so they're going to help us fill in the explanation.
I support the change.
Speaking of Corinne, I see has raised her hand.
Corinne, please speak.
Hi.
Speak at length, because I need to step away from the camera for a minute. So talk as long as you can. I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Well, so I was going to keep it short, but when I was researching this last year and the year before that, I spoke with several administrators of public schools, and they feel that beyond the kind of social worker debate that was going on, they feel that they have enough funds and services for homeless students. And so I would definitely move. It was, I think health and education wanted to keep it on, but it's definitely not a priority from my standpoint.
Azia Body requests the floor. Azia?
I was just actually gonna corroborate what Corinne said, because it came on a couple of years ago when we had an increase of homeless students in CD6 in the schools, and we wanted to make sure there was supportive programming for them. And it sounds like from Corinne's research that actually has been alleviated.
Well, what does that mean? Does it mean we should move it off altogether, or?
Continuing support?
There's no continuing support in expense category. It's a perfect one for that.
Jim Collins requests the floor.
Jim.
Just on the outreach teams, and maybe Corinne, you can lend your expertise here. A few years ago, there was media reporting that these outreach teams were only having an effect on 1% of the people to whom they reached out. In other words, they were only able to get 1% of the targeted outreach people into shelters, principally because the shelters, I think, are deemed by many homeless to be unsafe. Do you know if that number has improved at all? Are we not doing something right with respect to that program, if that number is still that low?
I haven't heard that particular number. That is a very disturbingly low number that I would see if, I would definitely want to see that. As far as I know, yes, there's definitely a problem with the unhoused or the unsheltered not wanting to go into the intake shelter at 30th Street. I think we all agree why. So Jim, I guess to answer your question, we have breaking ground at our panel next week, Monday, and you can, I will ask them that particular question, okay?
Are they an outreach group?
Yes, so the outreach group for
Okay.
From 23rd to 59th, river to river.
Yeah, okay. I've tried outreach a couple of times, nothing happens. All right, thank you.
The Disman would like the floor.
Yes. So we're doing an expense budget for 22. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And while we're talking about they may be satisfactory now, I have big concerns about what might happen in cuts in the budget.
Yep.
So I think in my mind, This is continuing expense items to show we're interested in, and since you can't say continue, to me, keeping it here shows the community's interest in this area. So I think we should not think about whether things are fully funded now, but kind of try to predict also what 22 will look like. And I think we're going to see a totally different picture. And unfortunately, homeless and runaway youth always are things that are cut by the city.
Interesting. That's a persuasive argument because it's something that I've been thinking about with some of these other ones. One of the things that we have to sort of face is that we're not going to get most of what we're asking for. What we really need to do is protect what we've got, and maybe get like piddling ones. But we don't usually, in a good year, we don't get much of what we ask for. So I still have a little bit of trouble leading off with it as number one, but let's put a pin in that and come back to where it belongs as we go through. The street outreach, we've got some language coming in from Corinne has done a good write-up. I think one of the things in particular, Corinne, what we need to do is specific locations, if you can, like not just Bellevue South Park.
I believe that the language is very, very specific because it was actually written by Breaking Ground themselves. So it's very clear. There's like a contract attached to it, like their own language. There's like a file.
Is that is that among the stuff that you sent me?
Probably not.
Okay.
It's just like a file that's attached to the request. We can try to dig it up and send it to you.
Okay. Cool. Just as long as we have a little, I just think we don't want to limit it to just Bellevue South Park these days, because I think people want to see the words Turtle Bay. I think they want to see 30th and Lex or whatever, someplace on 30th Street.
Right. I mean, that was the argument last year. Like, it's not really fair because then, why is Bellevue South Park getting more attention than Turtle Bay? And even there's definitely, it's definitely a valid argument. The response that we had was it will take the pressure off the other teams so they don't have to go to the Bellevue South Park area so much. So they have more time for other areas. Yeah, you don't buy it?
I don't buy it.
Okay.
Well,
you're coming to read me pretty well. If you can go from
I don't know how we are affected, but and I'm not sure of the catchment area, but Breaking Ground has a separate contract with Grand Central Bid. And where Grand Central Bid comes into our community board, they cover that area for homeless. So it may appear in that portion of our district that there's more service going on because they have a separate contract with the bid.
All right, well, I'll work on the language and,
let's work on the language. And what we're going to do, just so people know, we're going to have to approve our ordering and the language of the budget requests at a separate time. Now that time officially is going to be the half hour before the board meeting in October, but I will get you the language before that for comment. I'm not going to just spring it on you at that point and say, we've done all this work, here you go. So, but I do think we can rely strongly on Corinne's committee members to pull that whole thing together. Okay, so on we go with number 3, security cameras, and these are located at Strauss houses. I don't see anybody have a problem with that. Okay. Park safety through security staff. This is park enforcement patrols. Now, let me take a expense number 4.
Who is
I don't know what's going on here. Pam is basically taking out everything. I don't know what she's thinking.
Is Pam, are you here?
No, Pam's not on.
No, Pam's not there, but I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but as a member of the committee, and I know that the staff had a separate discussion with her this week, but from prior discussions, there were things that were on the park budget for many, many years, right? And she felt that we should take those out because, to show what our priorities now are, the things that we really want, because these were things that had just been there for years and hadn't gotten funded.
Okay, I mean, if I could speak for a second there about that, the PEP officers, I could live with removing them, even though I'm not sure that it's a great idea. But right now, when the parks are under severe stress and are likely to be for a continuing long amount of time, and are already suffering the consequences of that with piled up garbage. I mean, all you got to do is walk past the New York Post on any given day to see what it looks like. I don't think that we should give up on the idea of hiring more staff to keep the parks in some kind of condition that they're usable, because they're under stress. So maybe that could be taken back to the Parks Committee and have it run through them and see whether they think that's a good or bad idea, whether they all want to remove it, especially if this is something that Pam was doing with the office.
Yeah, I can check with Pam on all of these things. When I reach out to her about the St. Barton's Park dog run issue.
That would be, if you could do that, that would be great.
Just to let you know, though, so one of the things that the park, told us at the last park meeting was they usually have about 1,700 people they hire as temporary workers during the summer in the park to do cleanup. This year, none of those people were hired because of budget cuts. So so not only do we need more people, but there's actually, additional people that are normally hired haven't been, so even that might be a request that we need for next summer when park usage is at its highest. We want to have those people hired.
That's right. It was the youth services jobs and all that sort of stuff that the mayor cut that directly impacted the parks to an even greater extent.
Yeah. See, what I'm reacting to is that there has been a lot of coverage of the parks getting, kind of really a mess, and we know that because of the presence of people who are experiencing homelessness, it's also getting comments from that regard that between the security and the cleanliness of the parks, you'd think, and at a time when people are reaching out for green space where they can actually go and get away from their small apartments during a period of kind of confinement, you'd think this is exactly when you'd want to be advocating that they should be having more people doing the work. Now, I've never understood the argument that because it's been cut, we shouldn't bother asking for money. I mean, if it's been cut, it's an even greater need, as far as I'm concerned. But that's just my opinion. That's not a fiat, but it just doesn't sit well with me when somebody says, well, we're not going to, we've been asking for it, we haven't got it. Doesn't mean that we give up on it.
I'd agree with that.
Request the floor.
Yeah, no, I don't. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I'd agree with that, and I'd also add that this was mayoral budget cuts, which could be restored by rejiggering the money from someplace else. For example, during the council's reconsideration of this, if sufficient public pressure is brought to bear, and I think something to think about.
Well, and the other thing that we don't always pay attention to is that the city council members and the borough president use our district needs statement as support for how they distribute money. So it's quite possible that Keith, for example, might want to give extra money to, might want to make a show of support for Turtle Bay by having more people patrolling Turtle Bay area. So I don't want to take it out for that reason, but I think we do need, it is from the committee. So Reshma, if you could make that a priority to talk to Pam about it.
Yeah, no, I will. And I will mention, I think you make a good point that just because they've made cuts doesn't mean we don't ask for it.
Right, and just because it's been on the list for a long time doesn't mean we, you know, Corinne has reminded me several times that I have been known to say, you know, it takes 10 years to get things done. It takes a while to get some of these things done. You have to hammer at it. And sometimes they come through and sometimes they don't.
Brian requests the floor.
I'm sorry, who?
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven requests the floor.
Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was party to communications with Pam about our budgeting government priorities process. And my impression of her response is that she does not agree with the premise of what we are trying to do here with this process. So I definitely believe we should leave the items on the list and have Reshma and or the office circle back to her and strongly communicate to her that any item that she thinks that would make the district better, including items that are on the list already, should be left on. And we should also discuss specifically the fact that what we're doing is we are advising the city about how to rebound when budget cuts are restored, rather than trying to act like we can just deal with the budget cuts forever. This budget is aiming for a period in time of the city where we will likely have revenue to fund these things.
Okay, so we're going to keep those. We're going to get more information from the Parks Committee. And then we're on to 6, enhance education and recreation programs, senior facility, providing meals and services. Oh, this is where we start talking about the creative programming. Ozzy, are you still on? Okay. This would be the parallel thing to what Ozzy was talking about. So I think we've got, if you look at this one and then at 10, which has to do with home care services, we're looking at creative ways of providing services to seniors for whom it is not safe to necessarily show up in crowds, at least not right now. So we'll keep 6. We'll enhance educational and recreational programs for seniors. If we can find a better request so that seniors are emphasized, that would be nice. But if we can't, that's the way it goes. Community board staff. I've had a conversation with Jesus about this. I'd like to move this down the list. That's not to say that we don't think that the staff should be adequately funded, but Jesus has done a good job of assessing where they stand right now, and they stand pretty good. So we wouldn't want to take it off, but we don't need it to be a top 10 item.
Yeah, and I think this also applies to our, our overall budget, and we are looking at rebounding, especially because we had a big haircut this year.
Where was the cut?
In the OTPS.
OTPS was cut. Oh, that's interesting.
Pretty significantly, but not to an extent that it would affect.
We'd still be okay. Okay.
And also, our non-baseline funding was removed, and we want that funding back. Our position was always that non-baseline funding should actually be baselined.
Yeah. Now, there's some place we talk about that. It would be nice to get the baseline funding made part of the budget. They don't have to go any higher, but So maybe when we move this down, maybe that's the key, to focus on getting the baseline raised to reflect the 2 recent years of increases.
Are we sure that this isn't that item though?
I think this is the item.
I think that, yeah, I think the table and the reference name aren't communicating effectively that this is anomalous.
Yeah, in the explanation, it talks about there's been no increase in community board base budgets. CB6 has advocated for additional base budget funding for community boards in our last several district needs statements. It focuses, the explanation that we give focuses on baseline budgeting. But I still think we should put it down a little bit. It looks a little, in this particular time, it looks a little self-serving. We'll move it down the list, but we won't get rid of it. Additional traffic enforcement officers. I don't remember looking at this one. Okay, this is a,
just keep in mind, we only have 20 expense items. So if decisions are going to be made to move down the list, you're going to end up with everything in the exact same order. Because at this point, we're running items that also need to go farther down.
Yeah, that's a good point. I question whether it's politically appropriate to increase anything having to do with the police department. But do we need additional traffic enforcement officers?
1, yes. 2, advocates are asking that division to be moved back out of NYPD. So at some point, it won't be an NYPD and we'll probably change the agency if that gets fulfilled.
Okay.
Hold on. You mean that the traffic safety officers, I think, have always been NYPD. I think you're thinking the school safety officers, which used to be DOE, became NYPD and are now going to go back to DOE. I don't think school safety or traffic agents were ever anything other than NYPD.
Well,
traffic control and traffic ticketing used to be handled by DOT, I believe. I think that
DOT, whoever, but I thought it was a police agency.
There was a group call that was referred
the Brownies. They used to call them, yeah,
because they're a uniform color.
Right.
So Rick, I don't think it's material to talk about the political, what might happen. I think if you listen to transportation, that enforcement officers has always been a major issue. And that's also Cohen's issue that I hear at every meeting.
Okay, then we leave it where it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Asia Body requests the floor.
Asia.
Wanted to just add, we have a need and we would like it to be supported. Who actually fulfills the need? The city decides whether it's the NYPD or another agency at another time. That'll be decided, right? I mean, that's how we do a lot of our budget.
The only thing we have to be careful of is to make sure that we direct the request to the right place.
Yeah.
After that, it doesn't matter, but you're right. After that, they'll figure it out, but we have to get it to the right people. Because it's very easy for them to say, oh, it's not our job. And they've done that. So, okay. Provide, expand, or enhance preventative services, alternatives for youth. Oh, this is the ACS item. I would like to just do a little bit of editing in the explanation to point out our particular situation with ACS. I don't think that there's enough focus on our district in this write-up. And we have some serious issues with ACS, and it's the implication partly because they've got too many teenagers now, and they weren't supposed to have teenagers at all. But that means that teenagers are, they cause problems. They're teenagers. So anyway, we'll do a little bit of revision of the explanation, but other than that, the the item is a good item.
Rick, I have to correct you. They cover from birth to 21.
They tell us what?
They cover from birth to 21.
21.
21.
Oh my.
That's part of the problem. Their population in the last couple of years has actually gone down in terms of teenagers in a certain category. But the problem with them is that they don't think outside the box enough to get to handle the problem that they're having. They don't stay focused on the problem that is affecting us and the surrounding community by the kids that are in the age group from like 14 to 19.
Yeah.
And the problem that we have is that that's not a stable population. So it's a population in movement. And we have been pressuring them the last year, the last 2 years, in terms of how they look at that population, how it fits into their overall structure, and how they can move a lot of those teenagers outside of that particular area into other locations that will benefit them. So,
yeah.
But you need to know that they cover from birth to 21.
Mm.
And that's a problem because the older kids can walk in and out. They will tell you in a minute, they're not a prison. They're not a jail. They're free to come and go.
I finally figured out how to read my screen. Ozzy has raised her hand.
Thanks, Rick. I just wanted to agree with Claude's take on this, and I would also add that the young youth that we do have here, the ACS Center has said that they are kids that traditionally would not have come to their center. There are kids where the parents can't even handle them and can give them to the city to take care of. In some ways, I think they use a different term for that, but so they are youth that they are really struggling to take care of. And I think making sure this is part of our budget request, make sure that if it's, whether it's at our center or elsewhere, there is funding for these kids to be supported in the right place. And we're making the case too that right place may be outside of the center.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we'll play with the language there to make it more, I think, to get into some of this stuff.
Rick, one thing we need to check, because it's been true the previous years, the reason some of these may seem not to get into all of the points is because the city has imposed an 800 character limit on these explanations. So that's to be borne in mind when reworking some of the text.
Thank you. I meant to ask you that this afternoon. It's 800 characters?
Assuming it's the same as last year, then yes, but we'll have to check on that.
It probably is. Okay. Okay. Home care services for.
Rick, I just had one comment on that.
Oh yes, Jim.
And it follows up on what Claude said. Why are we moving these kids around? I mean, if they're here in the neighborhood, keep them here in the neighborhood through their school years, so that they've got some ability to. Transferring schools is a very difficult and challenging scenario for a lot of children, no matter who they are. And the idea of flustering around and moving them from one area to another area, that's ridiculous. Keep them where they are. When they come in our neighborhood, keep them in our neighborhood for whatever period of time it needs to get them adjusted, get them into, graduation, high school, whatever.
Okay. Well, but that's getting into the programming side and not the priority side. So the Health and Education Committee has been working with the ACS group. There's a cab associated with that now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we have a meeting coming up.
Good. Okay. Conduct traffic or parking studies. The area of the Queens Midtown Tunnel, surprise, surprise. I think sounds like it's still needed. Any questions?
The entrance to the Midtown Tunnel is going to change dramatically, supposedly starting later this month, when in fact DOT is going to be installing the permanent bike lane there and reconfiguring the entrance to the Midtown Tunnel itself.
I have
Just so
hang on.
that you know that.
Yeah, no, I saw something like that. What do you suggest then we do with this item?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure how valid it remains. The thing itself is gonna change. They're gonna change the entrance itself to cut down. They're gonna cut out the slip lane there. They're reconfiguring the entrance to lessen the dangers of people making turns into pedestrians and all that sort of stuff. So this is part of the reason that this particular item was asked for. There are always problems with traffic around there, although kind of less right now. And so I don't know what you want to do with it. I'm not sure what the committee would want to do with it because we did just find this out literally a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So Rick will remember this is that every year Transportation had a budget request for a traffic study of the whole district. And long story short, we were told that wasn't going to work. So now we have a traffic study that we're asking for a part of the district pegged to a specific piece of infrastructure, not just because of the effects of that infrastructure, but because it's kind of a backdoor way of asking for a specific traffic study of a slice of the district. We hope that that would work. But not only is it kind of not working, it's also like, it just keeps getting pushed off even though there's actual changes happening around there. But the Transportation Committee's position is that we want traffic studies to be done. That hasn't changed.
But
and again, they have to be specific. This may not be, what I'm suggesting is that this may not be the best site for it, since this is already in motion. I don't know if anyone in transportation has a substitute site ready to roll to fill this item. This has become largely kind of moot.
That's what I'm wondering. Is the Transportation Committee meeting still coming up, or is it passed this month?
We did this one. The next one is October. We already did the September meeting. Yes.
By the time this is submitted, it might not even be just moot. It might be a lot of work might be done to make corrections.
We can talk with Transpo or we can mention this at exec later this week, and there might be room for a quick discussion about this. In which case, we're still asking for a traffic study. We might recite it if something comes to us.
Oh,
I have to go through the committee.
Yeah. It would have to, the location of where that study would be, that's a committee decision. I think you're going to find out.
We could pencil it. We could leave it as is, or we can ask for a new location. But for our ordering purposes, we can leave it at 11, and we can just say.
I think that's smart. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. If nothing else, it's a placeholder, and we'll deal with it. We got some time still if we have to. Okay, noise complaints, increased noise. We know that noise is like the #1 complaint, so we'll keep that. You've got specific location, so that's good. Job training programs. Where is this coming? What committee is this coming from? HR. Is this housing?
No. It's listed as budget.
Oh, that means
granted
from us?
Yep.
Which granted tends to be a bit of a catch-all for any ones that don't fit into any of the other committees, at least in the past.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's what we do. Do we want to keep it or not? I mean, it seems kind of odd to me.
Given the unemployment rate coming out of a lot of these restaurants that are no longer going to be open again, it might be a wise
job
item to
training.
include.
Well, as you say, job training is never a lost cause. I mean, that's always a good thing.
We never got a signal that we had really maxed out on this, so it's one of the reasons it keeps coming.
Yeah, let's keep it. Traffic improvement requests, 311 call. Paving personnel. Do you know, does anybody who's in transportation know what's going on with this one?
Yeah, it's bad.
It's a bad item or it's a bad situation?
It's a bad situation. As a matter of fact, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they milled all of the streets between 2nd and 3rd Avenue in our district, and it's just sitting there unpaved.
It's been milled but not paved. Oh, crap.
The city has had chronic issues with both the repaving and the repainting. And DOT has basically claimed that would they handle it citywide, they have no need for extra budget and everything is fine. In recent years, they started to talk about how, or the mayor had said something about increasing the number of units going to be applied to this. But we asked for it in the budget because we understand that they're trying to skimp on resources and drag things out as long as possible for budgetary reasons. We're asking them to throw more money at it so that when they do this stuff, they handle it in a timely manner, including the repainting after the repaving.
Okay.
Is there a repainting separate item between here and 20?
I don't think so.
So then this is probably both.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We may need to tweak the language a little bit. I just am not, it's not clear to me when I'm reading it what's being talked about. So maybe we may need an extra sentence in there. Okay, so elder abuse victims, do we have a problem with elder abuse in our district?
You sure do.
We do?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's what the budget request is for, to find
Okay.
out the extent of it.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is. It's a survey to see how bad it is. Okay.
Yeah, if you look at the data for the city, you don't have very detailed data, but elder abuse is a major problem. And it gets even more of a problem when you have the economic situation as it is today.
Right.
So I think that's right on for a survey.
Okay, perfect. 16, additional uniformed officers. We can take this one off because they told us to.
Yeah, this is for the NCO program, which was just instituted, and unless we have a reason to have that specific program increased, we might just be happy with it as is. And I believe that came from us, from this committee. So we don't have to check with another committee on that.
Yeah, no, that's good. The other thing is whenever we start mucking around in the police department's hiring practices, we get the same response. They're gonna, everything depends on how many people they let into the academy, and then they'll assign them where they want to assign them. But in this case, we were trying to help them out. Program's already in place, done.
If we were doing anything on that, I would suggest additional training for sergeants and white shirts, just in terms of de-escalation and things like that.
Dealing with crap, yeah.
That's where half these problems come up.
Yeah. Okay, so
these guys leave the academy and nothing happens afterwards. There's no additional training.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep moving here. Programs in parks and recreation centers. Parks.
Yeah, this is for ESCR. This is something I know the host committee feels pretty strongly about.
Do more outreach and alternative programming at locations.
So maybe she changed her mind.
Parks. 17. No, it looks like it's new.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is new because, in fact, we're facing it now. It's going to begin again. I can't stress it too much.
Yeah.
It's in process. This will be coming our way, and they've started to set up additional parklets and some additional stuff, but we need more because, as everybody knows, we have very little park space as it is, and we're about to lose a big chunk of it.
Yeah. For a while.
Oh, yeah, maybe a year and a half to 2 years for Sty Cove, and maybe, East River Park is not technically in our district, but everybody here uses it. And that's a minimum of 5 years and running out.
Yeah, well, that means 10.
Probably.
Okay. There. Oh, the landmarks one, committee says take it out. That's fine with me. Well, we always get, you're not going to get that anyway. And extend library hours.
I'd ask that this got taken back to parks as well, to reconsider removing this, because again, the libraries are a tremendous resource for people. The more hours, the more time, the more everything that we can get, especially now, they're just invaluable. And so whether or not it's likely we get it, I think we have a duty to push for it.
And
Totally agree.
And at a minimum, we should be able to, if we don't have a separate item, we have to at least mention it in the other. We have like 2 other items that are somewhat related. But definitely, this is not the time to be cutting back on library services, or they already have been. They're not just now starting to come back. Okay, and the last one on this list is promote.
So
immunization.
The new number 1.
I am happy to move it up, you know, but we definitely, so we certainly can keep it. We'll have to change the language a little bit.
Well, what's the language? Oh, measles.
Well,
Yeah, we're all worried about measles.
Yeah,
I don't think it should be measles, but that's a whole other thing. Are we really looking for marketing efforts? Is that what this is about?
I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to take the vaccine coming out, presumably. But I think it's also important that we get people to get vaccinated for flu so that they're differentiated from COVID sufferers.
Yeah,
I think since we're all aging, we can call it shingles.
Yeah, that too.
But
all of the age group.
All I'm asking, this appears to be a communications strategy that we
Yes,
want more
it does.
money for communications. So I think it needs to be clearer.
Okay. Communications.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd kick it up.
I don't think I have any additional items. Did you have something? Did anybody have anything that they wanted to add? Then okay, we have a couple loose ends here. We'll get them figured out. We've got a strategy to go back to a couple of the committees, get a little bit more information. We'll be beefing up some of the explanations a little bit, but we have our basic ordering, which is the most important thing for us. Now, what happens next, for those of you who haven't been through this, I think we all have been through it, is that we get the budget list prioritized, approved at the next full board meeting. The board does not rule on the full district needs statement. The district needs statement will be submitted at the end of October, so it won't be completed until at the time of the full board. And we haven't ever done it that way anyway. So as long as we get our priorities done, we're set. And I'm sorry we had to go through this item by item the same way we have in the past, but I think we went faster because of the work that Brian led us through before, and some of the responses from some of the committee chairs have been very helpful. Is there anything else on this topic?
On the budget?
On yes, the budget expense.
Yeah, I would just perhaps suggest to the borough president that she had, particularly with the census coming out, whatever next 2021, 22, whenever it's published, that she perhaps have training for committee chairs so that they can use the data provided by DCP, Department of City Planning, and thereby create more specific budgetary items to make this a rather than just talking spending vectors, to talk about specific spending amounts. You know, more or less doesn't really do much in terms of the budget process. If we can frame this in terms of budgetary requirements, in terms of data that we have available from the DCP, that makes us a lot more viable and much more professional, in my view.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to do, and I'll have to get all of you to buy into this. During the year, I think we need to be more aware, both in our committee and in the other committees, of what the district needs have been stated to be, and that we're working our way towards those district needs being fulfilled. I think we do this once a year, and then we just sort of set it aside, and it's done. It could be a really good management tool to assess how we're doing. It can be a good PR tool, and to a certain extent, to show that we really care about these things. We're not joking around. And I just think, we really, if we keep up with it, it'll be a lot more effective when we get to the end of this time next year, because we'll be able to have time to find out those dollar amounts. We just can't do it in the last couple of weeks. Now we've never been successful doing it before, but I'd like to put that out there as something that we should probably be aiming for as a committee, because if we're going to be a standing committee now, which is the case, we'll have some time in meetings to just periodically just bring it back up. And if each of you on another committee, maybe we can have somebody from Parks be in charge of making sure that Parks is staying on track. It's also, of course, a committee chair function. I'd have to work with whoever the new chair of the board is on what we do with that. But I just think we need to make these documents that we work so hard on more effective and useful tools, and not just once a year do it and put it aside. Okay. Now I have to go back to a script here.
Hello?
We're not good. Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a hand raised?
Right. This is Eva Lassiter. I think that's a great idea. I just wanted to know, what was the primary problem that this idea and procedure was not effective in the past, that perhaps that has to also be reviewed to make what you're saying more effective in the individual committees? That's what I wanted to know.
Okay. That's a good follow-up. I have to say that in a large measure, when I was chairing the committee in the past, I was a roadblock because I didn't enforce it. I didn't make it happen. I think what we need to do is just make sure that we do it now. I mean, there is no inherent roadblock to doing it, except the amount of time that it takes. And committee chairs sometimes shy away from taking on too much extra because they're already stressed out with the amount of work that they're asked to do. But if we as a committee can support the work of the individual committee chairs, then maybe we can actually make it happen. So let's see what we can do. We'll address that after October. Maybe we can start off the calendar year as an example and start looking at setting goals for when we get additional information, when we follow up with committee chairs and that kind of thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So we don't have anything we're going to vote on tonight. We have to get it in a little better format, but I think we've got the basic idea. We've gone through, we do have this one other item, discussion of potential resolution regarding government and user privacy. Brian, this was your issue. Can I ask if you would perhaps raise this a different time?
We could do a 120-second summary of it and see if we want to advance the work on it.
Okay, I would just tell you it's now 9:05, but yes, but go ahead. It's on the agenda. It's up to you to go ahead.
So this is not about the board's operations having a privacy policy. This is instead about us as a board coming across items and proposals in which the city might propose to us a program or a vendor which might need to collect user data or somehow monitor users based on the users themselves, maybe wanting the monitoring or perhaps for a public safety concern or anything like that. So the idea was, instead of calculating what the boundaries are or what our desires are every time such a resolution comes up, we would draft a kind of a broader resolution that says, in general, we think companies that collect user data should delete such data. It would be a little technical in nature, but it could be something where we have a little bit of a guideline and we kind of do our own thing, where then when the resolution comes up, we can say, refer to our original resolution of privacy priorities as an appendix to this. So it doesn't need to be fully written out or decided in the new reso. That's it.
Okay. What would you like to see happen at this point?
Say that again.
What would you like to see happen at this point?
This was just for committee feedback. If anybody thinks that this is a terrible idea, I guess speak up. Otherwise, it's something where I think we might just take a few months to kind of do some research, ask some of the tech smart people on the board to weigh in, see what the city's policies are already on this kind of thing. And then, I mean, possibly where we're going with this is to affirm current city policy through our board.
Yeah, so Rick, if I could just comment on it.
Sure.
When you do contracts for private vendors and stuff, any, at least government agency that I work with has a set of principles, and not keeping the data for a period of time is really important. So I think the research into this to see what the city is doing is really important, because you'll find these at different jurisdictions. And like, I'm sitting here right now not knowing what the city asked for, or maybe we should ask them to expand. But this would be in any contracting that anyone does from a government agency out. So I think it's a good research project. And then just people to come back and tell us even what it is. It's a very, very important issue. This data is retained by certain vendors that should not be.
Can I make a non-debatable motion?
Sure.
Undebatable.
Can we table this item until November meeting?
Well, we wouldn't table it.
It's non-debatable.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we table the topic. All those in favor of tabling until November, please signify by, how do we do this?
Just a word of advice, you have to vote to take it off the table as well.
Right, well, at the other end.
Yeah, and I think, I forget the requirement on that, but I think it's 2/3 majority.
I wasn't.
No, it's never more than 50% for a community board.
It's
Robert's
more like
rules.
to advance this discussion at a later date.
Charter
That's
changes, Roberts.
Just trying to give us time to understand what it is. That's
Yeah,
all.
that's fine.
Oh, then let's just do that. Like whatever.
No, the motion's on the floor. You gotta vote.
No, it is true. There's a motion. There's been a second. All those in favor of tabling this discussion, this item, please say aye. How about that?
Aye.
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 Okay, nay. All those who opposed?
No.
Okay, the ayes have it, so it's tabled. In the meantime, Brian, whatever you want to do as far as beginning research is fine with me, but the committee will not be hearing it until after November.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. But we do have to vote now to bring it back.
Yeah, in the future. We will vote in December to bring it back. Got it? We just have to take it
Is
off.
there any interest? Okay.
We just have to take it off the table when we're ready to take it off the table.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll look into it.
But that doesn't mean that you can't begin some research on your own.
Well, nobody was against the idea in principle. That was all I was really asking.
That's correct. That's correct. As far as I can tell. I don't think
May I say something?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Karen?
It's Karen, yeah.
Yes. Hi.
It reminds me of something Jim Collins said when he asked at either at a budget meeting or at some meeting, what link New York City was doing with everybody's cell phone who walked by all of the stations. And so I do think that that there is something there to what Brian's saying. I absolutely agree that it's 2.5 hours and my brain is Swiss cheese. But I would like to support his attempt to see what's going on with the data.
Okay, good. I think Brian will certainly appreciate that. And
Brian, I'll check with you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Is there anything else? Otherwise, I'm getting ready to.
Can I just beg the committee's
Indulgence.
Indulgence, yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay,
my brain is Swiss cheese.
Super
My
indulgent.
brain is Swiss cheese too.
Are we
Yeah,
talking
really.
old and new?
I would
Super indulgent.
just going. Would the committee be interested in entertaining something to which I spoke of at the beginning of this session? We just celebrated 9/11, and these guys put their lives on the line. We cannot leave them short on their pensions because we were obfuscating the reality. And I'm just wondering if the committee would consider, I'm happy to write the resolution, if the committee would consider taking up a resolution to the effect that when the comptroller publishes his annual report, which will be in October, that he, with the fiscal year having ended in June, that he revise his actuarial assumptions to reduce the assumed compounded annual growth rate to, say, 5.5%.
It's saying,
just advisory.
You're saying this is for October, meaning the next month?
Well, he just getting a resolution out. If we can put some pressure on him, he obviously isn't going to be able to do it, I guess, in October, now that you mention that.
Yeah.
But we need to start doing this with some sense of reality. I mean, the 10-year now is like less than 1% last I checked, like half a percent, which just means all of the investments we have are at considerably greater risk. We are making money on it now. We do have a higher return now, but that's, you can't count on that every year. And you can get blown out of the water big time.
Okay. How how I feel about this. This is a very complicated topic that I do not doubt that you know quite a bit about, but that the rest of the committee knows nothing about. And it would take a long time to get us up to speed to the point where the committee could
everything
do
would be explained in the
rational support. So
everything would be explained in the resolution. I'm very gifted at dumbing things down.
One of the things that I will not accept is a resolution that only one person understands.
No, everybody would understand it by the time they read the resolution.
We don't have a meeting in October. We have a half-hour meeting.
That's fine.
So
I just want to have it taken up. I want somebody in City Hall to look at this and say, you know what? The people are telling us that this is a big deal and it's a concern.
But if I may, Jim, the people aren't telling them anything. We haven't had any time to debate this. We haven't had any time to study it. We haven't had any time to really go through it. You raise it a lot, and we disagree about even the validity of
I raise it once a year. Now it's much more critical.
Let's kick it farther. Again, we've been at this for 3 hours. I know I don't have the brain.
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
that.
No, we're not going to get anything done tonight. You've placed it in our awareness, and we'll chat about it another time, I'm sure, but it's not going to happen in the next couple months. So is there any other old or new business? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion to adjourn does not require a second.
Oh, I
There
take
no-
it
If there are no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting. And thank you very much for a very long meeting. I'm sorry my first meeting was so long, but you know, it's me. So, but
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much.
You did a good job, Rick.
Yes, you did a great job.
Hey, Paige, Paige,
Coming up. Yes,
can you hang on for a second? I just want to talk to you about something personal.
sure.
okay,